Okay, we are on. All right. Listen, man.
Elijah remembered what he said last week, which was he was going to start the stream laughing like you just finished a joke before we.
Yeah.
That's right. Oh man.
You know,
he has how short my memory is. Is that your artwork on the wall behind you?
it is my artwork. Yeah, I just thought it'd be fitting to put my, I worked hard on that. Actually, I did that.
It is your artwork because someone gave it to you, right? Who gave it to you?
Yeah. It was. This is her name is DJ's daughter. Gave it to me. She drew it, and then I told her I need more. But I thought it was just so fitting, given that I'm the pupil in this position, and we could just pretend that I drew it, and then Sam is the professor. Yeah, and I'm just there it is.
Whew. Listen, man.
If anybody else wants to send me artwork,
I'll send you
from the
some.
stream.
I'll make
some. All right, bet.
Hey, Mr. Rashidi, I see you around. I meant to get back to you today. Thanks for coming to class. It was great, actually. I really wanted people to meet you. Mr. Rashidi came in on Thursday's class talking about migrants. Yeah, migrants. I had this idea for that class because I was thinking that the vast majority of people in the U.S. don't get a chance to ever talk to anybody who's undocumented or from an undocumented family who knows people who are undocumented or illegal, whatever we want to say. So I just built that class around that idea that just hear from them, not even hear their stories, just hear from them. Who are they? What do they? How do they talk? What did they say? Who,
Right.
Yeah.
Like to break to actually hear about the real stories.
But not
lived
just
experience.
Just actually meet a person, the child of somebody who is undocumented, right? Because you don't know, you just don't know. It's a very interesting thing.
That breaks through a lot of scripts, right? Like just talking to the person, breaks through all the other things about that person, right?
Yep.
Or
about that group.
About that group. Yeah, about that group. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was good.
Mm-hmm.
Jennifer Young says, I work with immigrant workers. One saved my life by pulling me out from under a combine when I was having a seizure. That's intense. That's intense.
That's crazy.
I mean, it's just that, we're here to, Social 19 is about empathy, right? It really is just about meeting other people and hearing their stories and not thinking like them, just having some sense of who they are.
Man, you bringing up empathy right now is so poignant at the moment, at the center of World in Conversation. So you're just saying that, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, empathy, here it comes again, the term empathy.
And it's funny, right? That certain people in the current, I don't know, that it's taken a really, really bad rap recently by people who identify as more conservative, or I don't know, lean. I've heard it coming out of the Trump administration, like J.D. Vance and a few people saying that, empathy has destroyed the United States. I think Vance said, or someone said.
Wow, that's interesting.
Well, it's seen as understanding, taking the steps to understand another person and then accept them for exactly who they are and what they do, and everything's okay. Whatever they do is fine. Have empathy, right? So if someone commits a crime, it's well, yeah, but have empathy and that kind of thing. Accept them, be like them, whatever. I don't know.
And that's kind of distorted, right? That's a distorted version of, because don't people really mean okay, the person who committed the crime, understand, try to put yourself in the shoes of maybe what situation. And this is so interesting because this is talking about what you talked about in class at RJI, This is like the other position of the position that you were sharing at RJI. But just the idea that, like, that sounds a little more distorted, but the idea of empathy is like, oh, well, not just like just accept them because they did this crime. It's like understand maybe what is the context of maybe why they committed the crime, or where are they positioned that put them in the circumstance to maybe do that. And
that's right.
Like,
and the reason is because it makes us smarter. It makes us better understand other human beings. And the more we understand human beings, the smarter we are, right? It's like human beings are the most complex creatures in the world, right? Well, who knows? Maybe platypuses are, but anything that looks like a platypus is probably pretty complex in other aspects of its being.
Right, platypus, octopus. I don't know.
The whole thing. By the way, they say the octopi are really, really smart.
That's why I brought them up. Yeah.
Okay, but going back to the other, it's just like human beings are complex, man, and so I look at other people. I want to try to understand them. Like it's just as cool. It's cool to understand them. I mean, that's what we do in our field of study, right?
And does empathy try to get people, maybe there's that position of it's in like thinking about a person's, like, let's say a person committed a crime, and having that person think about, their position to what led to that crime, does that implicitly lead people to start thinking about our systems?
No, it doesn't need to at all. No, nor does it need you to accept the person or change your actions or anything. When I learn about somebody who I didn't learn about, say, let's just take Thursday's class, right? So here you have these children of people who were undocumented talking about, just talking about who they are, just talking. It's like, okay,
Thursday's class or Tuesdays? Oh, Thursdays.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we called it the Migrants. I don't want anybody watching to say, oh, I should accept them. I should act like them. I should do anything. I should do something. No, you shouldn't do anything. The purpose, it's an empathic exercise, and the only thing you should do, or I want you to do, is just understand them. Just have a vision of them in your own mind. Just understand something about them, and therefore understand something about yourself and about human beings. And that's it. And so then you can take it the next step and maybe think about larger policies or something. But I don't care about that. I just want to give you the opportunity to have an experience of another human being. And that's it, man. And you'll become smarter because you'll see them and you'll say, what's it mean that I'm listening to this person and I'm hearing what they're saying? Like, what's that? What's that mean for me? And then you start.
Right. Yeah. And is it, what do you see as the distinction between like understanding and acceptance? Like, maybe you're talking about the approach to get somebody.
No,
I don't think that you're talking about.
Go to understanding and acceptance. That's a really good difference. So it's like, if I am hearing, I'm listening to these three students who are and Mr. Rashidi on the screen, right? Mr. Rashidi is someone who comes from Afghanistan and lands in the Netherlands. And nobody in the Netherlands asked to have this Afghan immigrant come and live in their community. They're not saying like, hey, we want to have this. So he shows up because of his work with NATO and the Dutch government and so on, and his work with us. So now here he is in Gouda in the Netherlands. And so like, all right, well, people watching the class can just hear the stories and by hearing the stories, you start thinking about different aspects of the stories. And as you're thinking, your mind is working and you're just getting smarter. You don't have to accept, you don't have to like somebody, there's nothing you have to do. It's just get smarter. That's empathy. Action is something entirely different. And I think a lot of people confuse.
Action is something different than.
Yeah, action doesn't follow empathy. I mean, you're going to probably think if you think differently, you're probably going to act in some kind of way. I don't know, as a result of that, but maybe not. So a lot of people have the idea that empathy means you have to act in a certain way also. It's like, no.
Would accepting be a form of action?
Yeah, no. Yeah, well, it could be, but I don't see it that way. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's an acceptance. So you don't have to accept. You just have to understand. You have to.
What does it mean to accept? Now you're making me think about.
It would mean for me to see these 3 students sitting on that table and go, oh, it's okay that they're here. It's okay that their parents came here, their families. It's okay that other people in their communities come here illegally, right? Somehow it must be okay because they seem like nice people, and like, why shouldn't I like them? And okay, maybe like you start feeling some kind of way about like, oh, I should, or I'm a jerk, or I'm whatever. It's like, no, none of that. So, you don't have to do anything.
So like accepting is like when you start to position yourself with a side, maybe, and then I don't know. I'm just like riffing here.
No.
Understanding is beginning to rationalize.
That's understanding exactly what it is. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Hold my earphones.
Yeah, I got you excited with that.
Yeah. That's exactly what it is, man. And a lot. So, we in the West, we're pretty good at empathy. I mean, people can.
Ooh, what is pretty good at empathy?
Well, hang on. Some people are good at it. Some people aren't. Yeah, some people do, because a lot of people just don't have an interest in other people, so they don't really. I mean, we're all doing it at some level, right? We're all reading other people. We have our I see my neighbor cutting his lawn, and I'm like, and it's hot, and then so I say, what would it like to be right in his shoes right now, cutting my lawn on this hot day?
Does he need a glass of water?
Does he need a glass of water? What's he thinking? What's he feeling? Is he happy he's out there? Is he not? Is he? At some level, I'm empathizing. I'm going there. I'm putting myself in his shoes. I'm trying to understand what's going on with him. So we're doing it all the time,
right?
The thing.
And then some people aren't.
Some people do it probably more than others. But I do it all the time. I'm always looking at humans and wondering, hey, what is it like, or how is it? I was just driving and I saw this person in this really big truck, and I just thought to myself, what's it like to drive a really big truck like that? Who's that person? What's it like to be them? Like, what would it be? Who would I be if I were sitting in that seat of that big truck? What would I be thinking? How would I be feeling? How would I see the world? I'm like going on and on, right?
Yeah. So. Yeah. And also, I forget, I was watching a Monday. Yeah. So there was a football game on Monday. There was always Monday Night Football. And then, I just was making sure you're good. There's always Monday Night Football. And then after that, since it's on Monday Night Football is on like NBC or like something like that, it's always like the nightly news that comes on after that.
Yeah.
And so that was just playing in the background, and it was talking about Trump and his speech and like, the peace treaty or like the ceasefire that he was signing, and was talking about that. And there was some other guy coming on, and I can't remember if it was somebody that I maybe like naturally disagreed with, or based on how he positioning himself. I did something where I started to notice myself tune out. I was noticing me just seeing him, and just his mouth was running, but nothing. I wasn't taking anything, and I noticed that.
Yeah,
for that second.
Cool.
And I was like, wait, let me just like believe. You know what you were saying? Like believe him for a second. Or just like hear him. And I was like, whoa, that was just like a cool moment of me. And it was like, wow, the amount of times that people like without empathy or without just like, wait a second, like just tune out voices
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and you're just looking at the person, but totally tuning the voice out.
Yep. And so you want to understand the thoughts and the feelings of the other person. So why do you tune out? If you tune out, that's not empathic. Empathic
Exactly.
is tuning in.
Yeah,
I'll give you
exactly.
an example. I'll give you an example. I was listening.
Yeah.
I was walking home last night, and I was listening to to BBC World Radio, and so it was So it was over in the UK. So it's like 11 p.m. their time. Anyway, I'm listening to the story about tariffs and about whether tariffs are going to end up being good or bad, and then they were talking about the government shutdown and who's responsible. And there was this guy, and he sounded really smart. He was making these points that clearly he knew what he was talking about, and he was making these points, and he was blaming most all of it on the Democrats. And I was trying to listen. There was traffic, so I was listening through my earphones. But he made a few good. I didn't know who he was, but at first I was like, wow, sounds like he's blaming it all on the Democrats. Whereas I see it, Republicans and Democrats are equally responsible, right?
Right. But
I listened. A couple of things he said sounded really smart, and then. I said, wow, he's definitely thoughtful. That's interesting. That's this is his take. And then and I thought, well, why isn't he right? Like, why isn't it either the Republicans' fault mostly, or mostly the Democrats' fault, or why do I think I'm right when I blame it on both parties?
Right.
Equally. And then it turns out that he had worked for the first Trump administration. That's how when they signed off and they said, okay, thank you, so and so, former advisor or economic advisor for Trump, And I thought, well, just because he worked for Trump, there's no reason to not be like, I'd have to go back and listen to it, and I want to hear more from him, because you're going to have to budge me away from thinking that it's either. For me, I'm really grounded in the idea that,
it's
they're
both.
equally at fault,
Right.
Maybe it's 40-60 or 55-45. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, but I was like, okay, boom, man. Maybe if I saw the world as he saw it, and he was a smart person. He wasn't a jerk,
Yeah.
So I'd be thinking like he's thinking.
All of a sudden, it's like, I don't know if you're saying the same thing as me, but like, did all of a sudden it slowed down? Like, or I don't know. For me, it slowed down. Like, because I actually started to because you were like, yeah, maybe he is right, or like, why might he be wrong? Like, actually, like slowing down, like you just said, like, why might he be wrong?
Do I think I'm right? Because I haven't given much thought to this. I haven't really looked at who's put the proposals out and who hasn't, and like really lay it out. And I haven't. So I'm like, and in a way, it's just sort of lazy on my part to say like, okay, it's both equally responsible,
Yeah. It's so crazy how like you get caught down. We get like caught down. Everybody, we get caught down the stream of just what we are, of the stream of our position, and then the tuning. Wow, and just to slow it down and be curious, and because even like the question of like, why isn't he right, still feels like a little, but it's like closer to that. It's closer to it's curiosity, and so now you're closer to listening.
Yeah, totally, man.
Totally.
That's cool. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
It's like a shock too. It was like a shock for my brain for a second.
Yo, man, that's the thing. That's why empathy, really, if you try to understand, and share other people's like thoughts and feelings, sometimes like it's mostly about feelings. I mean, because you mostly have to really drill into them, but it's also thoughts, and like, because they all go together. Thoughts and feelings go together. So anyway, it's really, it's cool, man. All right, listen.
And so okay. I was about to comment on the idea of thoughts and feelings and going together, and how what if never mind. That's a whole different thing I was about to dive into based on what you said.
Yeah, I think Jeff wants us to try to get to the Thursday's class.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, man. Oh, here. Okay, let's pick number 2. Let's pick the second one. Man. The second question is from Jennifer. How has migration changed American culture? Well, my take on this actually is that migration is American culture or U.S. culture. I mean, we are absolutely a nation of immigrants. Yeah, we are. You know, it's yeah, and yeah, and I was looking at Stephen's comment that it was the newsroom on BBC World. Yeah, that's what it was, the newsroom. And anyway, yeah, we're a nation. We're just a nation of immigrants, man. And it's so you don't really understand it till you live in a country or spend time in a country that's not filled with immigrants. And once you do, and a country that's much more monocultural, and once you do that, you really just see how incredibly unique a place like this is in the United States. Yeah.
That's interesting that you talk about that. Just I had a dialogue that I was observing right before this, and there was a student, the international student that I think was from China, and they were talking about like who's in their country, and I guess he brought up a group of he was talking about a group black black citizens in China that like stay in a certain area. And where was I going with this? And it just the facilitator was just saying the way that he was talking about it, they weren't like sure what he was about to say, like about that area, and there was like almost an anticipation of like,
oh, that's
cool.
Like
he said something about that, and then he kind of like laughed and paused himself, and then he was like he said that they have a word for it, but he just called it in the dialogue like a black area.
Yeah,
but the facilitators were nervous for a second because they're like, what's he gonna say? And I'm thinking of that because you were like, for some it's very different because in the US, in China, it's not like that. There's so many.
No. There,
so
like in China, there are very few foreigners living in China,
right?
So and the dominant the dominant group are Han Chinese, which is like almost like about 2/3 of or 3/4 of the population. Right. So that's why people look a certain way, But it's just different cultures that just don't have the level of immigration we have. And then, Jennifer also asked, like, how has American culture imposed stereotypes on migrants and foreign ethnicities? And I think, well, we do it because, well, first off, people generally form stereotypes out of groups and out of something group related. And historically speaking, immigrants, which is kind of true almost everywhere, when there's large numbers of immigrants, they migrate in waves because you have to migrate somewhere. Most people migrate somewhere where they know somebody, and they know someone from their home country. People are going to tend to be like them and look like them and speak their language or maybe be family, So then you see groups of people and you start forming these stereotypes, like the one I talk about with Polacks and white socks, Polish people in white socks. But that's where, and so we oppose them on them because we don't see the complexity of groups.
Right.
All right, man, let's do the next one. Stephen, if there were no migrants to fill the jobs that Americans don't want to do, how difficult would it be to get Americans to do those jobs? We just have to pay we don't know really. You just have to pay enough money to get people to do that and to do it day after day. You know, like the mushroom caves. We have these mushroom caves in southeastern Pennsylvania where you go underground and you grow mushrooms. And so many of our mushrooms that are mass produced here are produced in those caves. There's so many caves. And the people working in the caves are overwhelmingly migrants and have been historically undocumented migrants. And man, you got to go in that cave, man. It's cold, it's damp, it's dark, and you're going to work down there working on mushrooms day after day after day. And if you don't have, this is just an example of that. Forget about going out in the hot sun in a field down in Texas harvesting, peppers and bananas or tomatoes and cucumbers and one thing after another, man, day after day for 8, 10, 12 hours a day. If you don't have to do that, man, it's really hard to do a job like that. It's really, really hard. And so the thing about migrants, especially undocumented migrants, is first off, you're going to be hungry, man. You're hungry. That's the reason. I don't mean hungry, food hungry. You're driven. Driven. That's why you're here, and you're going to do whatever you got to do. And you sacrifice something, and you've mortgaged your house or your land or something you've done, man, to get here. And you're just going to do whatever you got to do. And that's why you can go to New York City, or I was in Chicago. We took a cab, and this guy was a dentist from Nepal, I think. He was a dentist, man. He was driving Uber, man. And so he's going to do that because he has to do that. He's not sitting back going, I'm a dentist. I have to do dental work, so. Man,
I'm not going to lie. Stuff like that frustrates me so much because I can't tell you the amount of times that I've encountered that. I don't know if you remember when I texted you that one summer of in 2018 when I was I'm working for a factory at Urban Outfitters. And I was telling you about all the different people I was meeting. And the first time I encountered highly educated, this one dude was an accountant, and then there's a guy here in State College who's a lawyer from a from a Latin American country. And he was a dishwasher, when I was serving. And
dude, listen, man, that's the thing. And so and that doesn't mean, okay, so now we're saying this, that doesn't mean, okay, here are these people, they're so hardworking, they're so driven, therefore you should support them. I'm not saying that at all. I'm for me, I'm saying, wow, that's really amazing. I don't feel the frustration that you just mentioned.
Right.
I don't have that. For me,
I was saying you did too.
It's such a deep, it's so curious because I've had friends who have come here who are professionals, man. One was a medical doctor, one was a veterinarian, and from Ecuador. And they came and they worked, they lived and worked and here, and they both were able to get papers to travel here, but they worked in factories and stuff, man. They're my friends. Then they went back home and now they worked in their fields, but still, it's wild, man. It's so wild.
And if they want to go work for the profession that they were in the other country, they have to either get re-educated again or take some. Why is that? Why can't?
Yeah, well, because we just have different systems, man, and you don't know that their education is really going to be sufficient. Honestly.
Okay.
Like in Afghanistan, you can go to law. You can go to college for 5 years, and you're a lawyer. You're trained as a lawyer, but you can't come here and practice law. We have completely different law, man. I mean, it's totally. And here you would go, you go to your undergrad and then you go to law school for a few years. And it's complex, man.
It's so tough. I guess I just feel for it. There's a huge rationale and a basis for it. For me, I feel that.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, when you go to a doctor, here, you got a problem. You want to go to someone who's been vetted by this system.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so it's like, okay. I mean, a lot of people, they don't do the gen eds we do, right? So in Afghanistan, you can go to school 5 years and you're a lawyer, but you're not doing the gen ed kind of classes that we do here. So it's a more speeded up process, so to speak.
Right. And it's, so I guess 5 years of pure law, like rather than like 2 years of gen eds and then 3 years of law or something.
Yeah, that's right, man.
4 years.
Yeah. All right, man. Listen, what's the next question? Whopper says, is the migration problem in Western nations not the cause of higher educated people? A higher educated population leads to a decline in people wanting to do the bad jobs. Yeah, definitely, right? These spots need to be filled, and it seems to me a natural response. Yeah, well, in a way, it is a natural response. I mean, here's what's going to happen, right? So we say Americans won't do certain jobs. Well, they will if you pay them enough, man. So someone's going to go down those mushroom caves. You're going to... Alijah, right? They could pay you enough money that you would move down to southeastern Philly and work in the mushroom caves. In your case, since you already have a job, they'd have to pay you a lot, but they're gonna pay enough. Eventually, people are gonna take the jobs, but then the price of mushrooms is gonna go through the roof, right?
Right.
Happen. And then you can find people to take jobs for a hot minute, but you got to work longer than 3 weeks or a month or something, man.
Inflation is I don't know why I'm thinking about this, but inflation is so interesting. It's like, why do we always have to have the margins that we like? Why do we have to have such crazy margins?
Yeah.
Where I don't know. It's so interesting because like they're thinking about revenue, and they need to make the most money and have the biggest margins so they can make the most from
because the companies have their costs too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody has a cost,
but they're always trying to reduce the cost to the smallest amount so they can have the grossest margins.
Well,
right?
That's because labor is the easiest. Labor is where you have the greatest amount of flexibility. You're right. Other costs are fixed, right? You build your mushroom caves, you build that all out. Then you got to get your mushroom spores, but you make them. I mean, really, it's once you have the land, you got to pay rent on the land. You have to do certain things, but labor is the thing that's most adaptable, so to speak, right? And I mean, in most industries, and some it's not the case. If you have a restaurant, the price of food's going up and down, and transportation and all sorts of things.
You wouldn't say all about margins is just like we're just capitalist America and we want to make as much money as we can.
Yeah.
Like if it wasn't so fixated on making as much money as you can, then maybe we could have less margins, but still.
I got you. So you bring labor costs down, but that wouldn't be the case. Like in a restaurant, you know what I mean? Like the mushroom farms, I'm sure they're not making an exorbitant amount of money, man. It's not technology. They're not making the owners aren't gazillionaires. So,
Okay.
Anyway, so, so going back to Whopper's statement, it's like, yeah, well, in a certain sense, if you can't get people to fill certain jobs, you're going to have to get them somewhere, man. And so you got to and that's historically speaking with immigration across the southern border. We let, when we need to slow it down, we put more border, we cut it, we slow it down, man. More border patrol more, that kind of thing, right? And then if we need more labor, then we relax a little bit. So, all right, man. What are the most prevalent reasons for people to migrate to the U.S.? Jennifer, once again from Indiana. Jennifer, you ask a lot of questions. I like that. You ask a lot of good questions. Definitely the number one reason is money. Is people who are really opportunity, needing or wanting more. That's the number one reason, man. And second after that is people who have reason they're struggling somehow. Maybe they live in an area that's really violent. Maybe their government is really put them is threatening them, or people in their community are threatening them. I mean, there are all sorts of things like that. But but in the end, I know people who political refugees, right? So Mr. Rashidi is really in that.
That was one of the guys from that I met when I was a server, because he had a target on his head, because he was like a lawyer for, I think, like politicians, or he was like the head of something, and he was saying that he had a target, and so he had to leave because they were trying to kill him and his family.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, that's like, this is it, man. This is like Ruffy and Mr. Rashidi.
Right.
Okay.
Wow.
What else do we have, man? Let's see. Axel says, in relationship to U.S. and Latin America international cooperation, how much does the U.S. drug consumption issues play into drug manufacturing and distribution? Well, it is a great question. It's a huge part of it, right? It's like, production and consumption, distribution, consumption. Like, if there wasn't a demand here from the US and Europe, let's say, because you've got all sorts of meth issues, and cocaine right now is particularly popular in Western Europe. If there's no demand, then nobody's got anything to sell the drugs to. So people aren't. But then at the same time, there's an availability thing, right? So if let's just go to the frat houses here at Penn State. So there's let's say 50 frat houses, okay, and they party a lot, right? And I'm just going to pick this because it's just a bounding community that we can work with, and they mostly drink beer, and after drinking beer, it's probably smoking weed. It's what I would imagine. But once in a while, I hear that someone got busted for coke or distributing, selling coke, or I hear from a student, like, oh yeah, different and certain coke's really popular right now, whatever. Well, but if the producers of cocaine are able to flood the market more, like get it up here, which is costly because you got to make sure someone buys it. It costs a lot of money to get, a half pound or a pound of cocaine into the US, man, let alone 5 pounds. Like, whatever you're doing, you're paying all along the way, you're paying to make that happen, and to transport it. But if you do that and so suddenly in all of these frat houses here at Penn State, suddenly there's a whole bunch of cocaine that just showed up. Dudes are going to be going like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. Yeah, I haven't tried that. Let me try that. People are going to do it more. There's going to be a demand, so you can create a demand just by putting it out there. So at some level, also producers are responsible for it just by creating demands.
Right.
Does that make sense, bro?
Yeah. Well, producers are responsible.
I mean, this idea that go back to being an undergrad, if you're not even thinking about, doing coke or something, but then, your buddy says, hey man, I just got some coke. You want to try it? Like, yeah, whatever.
I don't know about coke.
Okay, well, maybe not. In your case, you get the idea, though.
Yeah.
But listen, sure. But if somebody said was but if everywhere all your friends kept having a little bit of coke, and you're noticing, eventually you're very likely to break down, man, and be like,
if their experience is one that's positive and without anxiety and I guess all these other things, like if I'm seeing safety,
totally, totally. Anyway, so that's the thing, so people oftentimes, like the narcos, that are saying this one narco in Mexico. I forget what his name is because it's changing all the time, whatever. But he made a response to Trump saying like, "Hey, we're going to go after all the narcos." And this guy said, he's some big deal drug dealer, and he says, "You wouldn't have to come after us. All you got to do is tell your people to stop using drugs." You know what I mean? And I'm like, yeah, you're right. He's right.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Just reduce the market.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Or-
If they did, then they're like, okay, when our sales would dry up and I'd go sell used cars or something,
Right.
instead of trafficking drugs. But both are right. I mean, yeah. Yeah.
That's interesting. Now that we're talking about drugs, it's making me think about.
Yeah, AZ
like,
says, good luck finding fentanyl-free Coke these days. Like, yeah, man, dude, it's a whole different. Yeah, man, fentanyl absolutely changed the game.
I'm so interested in like the perception of like amphetamines, because that's an amphetamine, right? Like a methamphetamine,
Yeah,
Coke,
yeah,
and then the social perception of like psychedelics, because that's, I don't know, it's just making me think about
yeah,
the way it's perceived by the world, or like.
Yeah.
We're talking about college students, so I guess that crowd maybe. I wonder what that.
Dude, it's a whole different world. Hey, I see that Jenny Lee just entered the chat. Hey, Jenny Lee, I just before we started the stream, I opened up my WhatsApp for the first time in days because I'm getting ready to take off for Korea. I'm writing 6 different talks I've been writing, and man, I'm just trying to concentrate. I have to just shut all my apps down, shut all my everything down, check email, just try to get this done. So anyway, I'm going to open up. I see. I'll respond to your. I'll go in and look at. And then I saw there was like 11 messages. You were just sending like that. I do that sometimes, and I was like, oh man, okay, this is going to take it. So anyway, I'll look at it. I'll get back to you. All right, man. What are we at? Matt says, how has all the news about ICE activities impacted your lives or the perception about your position in the country? Hey, this is a really, I want to respond to this, man. Are you watching videos of ICE, Elijah?
No, but I told you that story about the gentleman that I Ubered to the Phillipsburg prison where his son was
incarcerated.
And he was a Penn State undergrad.
He was detained, right?
Detained, yeah. And I think he's still there, most likely.
Yeah.
Listen, and he's been there for 6 months. But
damn. Okay, so I've been watching a lot of these videos on ICE, and with people, people being picked up, and I don't know if the algorithm is pointing me only, or if the only videos that really break through for me are the ones where
they're violent.
They're pretty violent, man. There's a lot of violence, and then people are really standing up to the ICE immigration officers, and like sometimes like really boldly standing up, and sometimes, man, but the immigration officers are arresting people who are standing up to them and who are not just people without documentation, but a lot of violence. And I've been thinking
a lot of force, right? A lot of
force. I don't know, man. It really worries me. So I don't know. I know we're a country of 340 million people. There are about 13 million people in the country without documentation. Each day, it seems like every week we're hiring more ICE officers. So they're going after more and more people. Everybody's got a camera.
Right.
I don't know. I'm seeing every day. I'm seeing different videos, and it scares the hell out of me, man.
What is scaring you?
Yeah.
Like what does it make you think about? Like what do you feel?
Dude, like who are we going to become? When you send these heavily armed, really increasingly heavily armed police people, police soldiers. It's a cross between the two, into out in the streets, like rounding people up, and you're only going to do it. There's a certain violence because if they run, there's going to be some kind of violence to it, like there's something like it just. What does this mean? How much of this violence are we going to accept? Are we going to get to a place where it just is normal? Is it like it's so unsettling to watch. Yeah, I watched this video of this 14-year-old kid getting chased down and wrestled to the ground by a couple ICE officers, man. And I'm like, dudes, shit. like, it's like my eyes are just like, is this really where we want to go as a nation? And some people are saying, evidently, yeah, because they're hiring more and more people and people are supporting them. I'm sure people who are listening right now. But all I'm saying is, I get it. I get that if you're gonna go, find undocumented people who are here illegally and send them back home, you can't just put a sign up and ask them to come and be like, hey, here, come show up here. We'll put you on a bus and we'll send you home. Like, you're going to have to go find people. And so you're going to find people. You got to go first to big workplaces like these mushroom farms or whatever. You got to go where there are large groups of people, because when you think about, JD Vance said, we're going to send every one of them home. That's 13 million people, Mr. Vance. That's like, that's a lot of people, you do it one or two at a time. Good. That's a lot of people. So so something has to, that means that you're going to go after individual people and you're going after them in large groups. So it's always just this big group of soldier police going after some, the optics are terrible, but the actual process is terrible. So is that really what we thought? When people said we're going to go get undocumented, illegal aliens, illegal immigrants, we're going to kick them out of the United States, did they have this in their mind's eye? Is this what people were thinking?
The vision. There was just the vision of how
you're going to see
it happening.
6 ICE agents chase down, and then 2 of them tackle a 14-year-old girl who's she was Latina, right? Is that what you had in mind, man? Were you thinking that? Because like, I have the idea that a lot of people were going, fuck, whoa, I didn't think about that. This is what it's gonna be. So anyway,
so many questions.
Yeah,
and also, so force is a question, like the examining force, examining violence, examining. I heard. Do you remember that thing that Laurie and I went to, the debate at Penn State?
Yeah.
And the 2 people came up and they were debating, and then there was like they were supposed to facilitate it. Well, the one lady who's who was representing the left was talking about like the way that they're also profiling, and how a lot many that are detained are even like citizens or
Like, well, you
and
have
it's
to
like,
do
so
that.
what else?
No, you have
like,
to do that. Well, you can't not do it. Look, you can't. People aren't just going to walk up to you and say like, "Hey, I'm undocumented. You got me. I saw you standing here on the street. I'm just going to turn myself in." No one's doing that. So you're going to have to profile. Like, you're going to be a sociologist, and you're going to be like, you're just going to profile. You know what I mean? Yesterday after class, I was talking to this student of mine, this kid. He was a little bit tall, and he was kind of, his name was Parker. And I'm like, dude, Parker, man. I said, what a name. I said, let me guess. In high school, you played lacrosse. And he's like, fuck, how did you know? And I'm like, dude, I just knew. I profiled you right there. I'm a sociologist. Like, I profiled. He's like, oh my God, like, how'd you know that? I was like, I knew it. I just knew it. I looked at you. I'm like, yeah, you played lacrosse. Anyways,
I hear.
So you have to profile, and you want to profile. You want ICE to profile, because like, otherwise, what are they going to do? They have to knock on they have to go to everybody. And the fact is, most people who are undocumented in this country do not look like me. They're not 65-year-old white men. Like, they're not. So you can knock us out, right? You don't have to. So you have to start like sort of wheeling away. There are some people like me who are undocumented, but not many. So you want to try to narrow your population down to the people that you're really going to focus on, and then you're going to profile it.
I guess it makes me ask about the approach, kind of like you're saying. I get that people aren't going to put a sign up, and you kind of have to. You kind of like, you're seeing why, like, some people's justification for force, right? And
Well, no,
Like
I'm not. You have to have force. Like you're going to have force. And what I'm suggesting
or violence, like violence.
You're going to have a certain amount of violence. And what I'm suggesting is that
but what about the
probably a lot of
approach to
people,
like the checks and balances of like, okay, I'm profiling, but can I check ID? Like, do
yeah,
I
no,
like
people. Okay, look, ICE. Like you're always going to policing. Here's a basic thing in policing, right? If you get to a level of where there's some kind of physical altercation with people, you've lost. Now things just got dangerous. So you don't. No police officer wants that. Now, there are police who are like kind of sociopaths. A few people where they will just immediately push things to go there. Okay, well they're not. Those they're rare. They exist, and some of them are assholes. And unfortunately, some of them, in certain communities, they're really active and they do really stupid things. But you don't want the violence. So you're going to start with, "Hey, can I talk to you?" And then if the person responds, you say, "Hey, do you have ID?" It's like yes or no, and then you go there. You don't want to go to the violent thing unless it goes there. But what we're seeing on video, we're not seeing all these. We're not seeing videos of ICE people walking up to people on the street and just being like, "Hey, how you doing? What's your name? Where are you from? Where do you live? Where do you work?"
And you're questioning the algorithm. You're like, maybe I'm just not seeing all those friendly
No, first off,
encounters.
nobody's making those videos. Nobody pulls their camera out. The moment ICE starts talking to you, Alijah, on the street corner, I'm not pulling my camera and going like, "Oh, I got to get this right here." And
they get the worst. They get the worst.
If I like, oh shit, things look like they're heating up, boom, my camera's out and I'm recording. So that's what you're going to get more of those videos. You're not going to get all the other ones, right?
So at the same time, you're still not getting all of the film. Only some clip is being shown.
Yeah,
the rest of the reality isn't being seen.
So most of the ICE arrests are gonna not involve wrestling someone to the ground. The majority are gonna be like, "Yeah, okay, you got me, man. Yeah, no, I don't have ID. Okay, well, you're gonna have to come with us. Okay, here, put the handcuffs on," and then they put the handcuffs on and they walk away. I mean, that's how these go. But what I'm suggesting is that there's going to have to be more of the violent interactions because it just is going to happen.
Or there's going to have to be more of them.
There's more of it. There's going to be that also. And as we go after more and more people, there's going to be more of it. So you're going to see more videos of wrestling people to the ground, that kind of thing. Right. And what I'm suggesting is I have the idea that when people have been talking about this now since Trump. Look, first off, long before Trump, I mean, people have been talking about it, but it didn't pick up any energy. I mean, when I was studying illegal immigration, 40 years ago, there were people having protests saying like, we need to send the undocumented or illegal back to their country, but it just picked up steam with Trump. And the idea is that people jumped on the bandwagon pretty quickly. Yeah, we should send them all back home. But where's your mind go right there? Send them all back home. And then I move on to my next, whatever it is, my next thing I want to think about. I don't stop and be like, how
are we going to do it?
What's that going to look like? Yeah, what's that going to look like? Okay, we're going to police. We're going to need a lot of ICE people. They're going to have to go into communities. They're going to have to walk into like stores. It's going to be like a Chinese restaurant. And you're going to be like, I know that there are the people working back in the kitchen, and I'm not really sure. Like, you're going to have to go in. If you just stand in the doorway, they're going to run out the back door. So you got to like go around the back. You got to, everything just gets ramped up. I'm sure almost nobody thought through all that. So there are a lot of people even now who are not seeing these videos who are supporting this, saying like, no, we got to just keep going and send them back home. And I'm like, well, but if you watch the videos, and again, I've watched the videos and I'm just like, oh man,
is it
hard to watch, man?
Yeah. Is it like not so to get certain things done? Is it impossible to be ethical if you like need to?
Well,
You have a mission.
okay, dude, thanks for going back to empathy. Empathy is going to throw
All
a
right.
wrench into that. Yeah.
Oh, so you're saying
gonna
empathy because
say-
of ethics and empathy? Like,
yeah,
is that
but, you know,
okay?
you're
Okay.
going to, people have hearts and stuff, man. You know, you get, most everyone knows that illegal people are working hard. It's a narrative in society. Yeah, you work hard. They're here. They're working hard. They're doing stuff.
Or they're committing crimes or something.
Yeah, well, mostly though, if you ask most people, it's like, yeah,
That they're working
they
hard.
work
Okay.
hard. Yeah, they're not committing a lot of crimes other than being here. But you know,
Got
and
it.
so I think you watch some of these videos, you're gonna say like, oh, like what I'm saying. It's like, oh, man, that hurt.
Yeah.
That's tough to watch, man.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know, man.
But like for the for those like the administration, like are they like it's impossible to be ethical and get the job done right? Like people aren't gonna come to a sign, so it's like
No
we have to
ethics.
bypass.
No.
We
Listen,
have to bypass
no. It's a different
ethics and
ethics, bro.
it's
No,
it's
no.
a different ethics. You're right.
Ethics,
It's a different ethics. That's true.
ethics is good
You
and
know?
bad, right and wrong.
Yeah.
So they are
Yeah.
being ethical. They're like, let's round them up, send them home, man. There's nothing more ethical than that. If that's yeah.
Because for them, they're
Nothing-
like, there's a different moral compass that they're trying to abide by, which is like
Yeah.
you're illegal here.
Yeah.
Like that's unethical in
breaking the
itself.
law, you gotta go, man.
So
Yeah.
you're right. So
And we'll
interesting.
deal
So-
with once you leave, and once all you people down in those mushroom caves, any of you that are illegal down there, that don't have documentation or work wherever you work, once we get rid of you, we'll deal with replacing you. But we haven't gotten there yet because we haven't sent back enough people to really put a serious dent in our in the economic system of production, you know, manufacturing, like the fields and stuff, man.
So it's like that, man. It just makes you wow. Like so, force, yeah. For them, force is ethical. Like, and it's
Yeah, when you have to use force. Well, it usually
you have to use
escalates
force.
in the force, right? You're talking to somebody, then you're asking them for ID. Usually, it just you tell them to do something. Well, listen, you're going to have to come with me because you need to have ID. And they could be saying like, but I'm a citizen, and like you can't do this to me. I have my rights. I'm a citizen. Yeah, but you don't have ID. And in their minds, and you look Mexican or Salvadoran or Guatemalan or whatever. And so like I've done my due diligence in profiling you, and that's what you look like. And you and I can say, well, you shouldn't profile, but please profile all the time, man.
So they can use that's what they're using for probable cause, that you don't have, like, they're a citizen, but they don't have ID, but they're not required as a citizen to have ID.
No, they're not required, but we're now in a different place where we're saying, yeah, but I know lots of people who are immigrants, man, who are who look black and brown, people like you, for example. Although, you know, you just look light brown. But like,
yeah, I just look, I don't know what
carrying their ID around with them every single place they go, man. They don't have their ID. Yeah, that's just what it is. Listen, man, soldiers profile, right? I mean, I talk to my, people who've come back from Iraq and Afghanistan, and they went out on patrol, man. You're out on patrol. You're profiling. You're looking around and you're being like, what's dangerous, what's not dangerous.
Right.
This is human beings profile. It's what we do.
Yeah.
And we can say like, yeah.
It's so interesting too, because like the other day I was like Ubering at for the football game, and I had these Uber police pull me over because I didn't have an Uber sign right on my thing, and I guess now they're auditing to make sure you have signs and stuff like that. So I got pulled over to the side, and because I didn't know what was happening, right? I was complying and I was compliant, but the first thing I noticed was when I asked a question, they immediately got defensive, And I kind of like broke down what I do, where I work. You know what I mean? Because I wanted to like inform
what do you mean,
the
Uber
moment.
Police? I mean, they work for Uber?
Well, no, they're like, I guess they work for the borough, or like within the what's the other word for borough? It's like
so like they were like traffic cops.
Yeah, kind of like that, but they said they were officers, but I wasn't sure what kind of officer, I don't know what
Yeah.
kind of language they were using to make me think something to comply. I don't
Yeah,
know, and I was
yeah,
just
yeah,
in compliance because it was so sudden. And, but like they were immediately, like I asked a question and there was immediately defense, and I was like seeing that. And so like I broke it down and I like gave them a suggestion. I was like, hey,
yeah.
listen, like you're pulling people over that don't know that they're of like why they're being pulled over. And if this is a new experience for people, like I've never seen you here. Right. And so for me to be curious and ask a question, is I'm just trying to understand the situation. And
Oh,
like,
that's cool,
and to
man.
immediately be defensive, like it feels like I want you to understand that like here I'm here complying, but
Yeah.
and I forget the language that I used, but immediately like their tone kind of changed, and then
Yeah,
they were
yeah,
like informing me and being more
yeah.
empathetic, and I was like, that's how we should be. But like I was just so triggered by the initiation of like I ask you a question and you immediately think that you need to repress me,
So, okay, so
or
they heard you.
like yeah, and they did. And but I would and
All right.
and I like told them about the work and
Yeah,
everything,
yeah,
just to be like we
yeah.
don't want to be in conflict or combat. We just want to collab like people. So I don't know. That's just really
Oh,
interesting
that's
about
cool. Yeah. Because if you'd have known, all they had to say was, "Hey, dude, you got to have the Uber sign on." It's like,
yeah,
yeah, all right, man.
yeah. Or like, hey man, I know that you might be shocked by this, and this is the
Yeah.
reason because we haven't been here before, and I get how you might be confused. Like, like
Yeah.
tell
Yeah,
me
yeah,
how
yeah.
you empathize with me, know that how I might feel from this, instead
That's
of like
cool.
immediately as an officer being defensive
Yeah, I
when
got
I'm
you. Yeah.
asking. So I don't know, and that's like things that I notice from
Okay,
sometimes
that's
those that
cool.
are in
Yeah,
power.
that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
And you know
yeah.
what, by the way, uh, that's part, I'm sure that's part of the training program, but out in the world, people forget their training. Cops probably
Right.
have more training than there's probably not a single profession in the world that gets more ongoing training than police, man.
It's
Ever.
why do questions become an offense sometimes?
Well, they don't. But it
Like
means like no. But listen, because what they're trying to shut down is the worst, and the worst is when you're not going to be in compliance. Okay, you're gonna be one of those people like I don't have to give you my ID. I don't have to tell you my name. I'm not legally obligated. I don't have to
right.
show you ID. They don't know that you're not going to go there, and because of that, and if you even think you're going to go there, they want to shut that down right away. Like, do not even don't go there. Don't
Yeah.
effing go there.
And then it feels like
Yeah, that's,
but then it feels like the reverse happens
I know. Well, that's
because
the
then people
thing.
feel silenced. And
That's
then
the
as soon as
thing.
you start
Like,
to feel
so,
silenced, it's beginning the war paradigm again. And it's just
no,
then
but
I'm like
maybe,
then I feel defensive because
okay,
now I'm
but
being
maybe
silenced.
that person might have just had a bad interaction with somebody else. And so they just immediately with you are like, dude, don't even go there, man. Just fucking, and you're like, oh, and not realizing that you were just, wait, hang on, who are you again? Like, who do you work
Right.
for? Like kind of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so, hey, Grant Bishop, I want to respond to that, to what you just said. How many Americans have died in motor vehicle accidents involving illegal immigrants? Isn't it better for ICE to take an aggressive approach than citizens taking things into their own hands? First off, not many people have died because of, well, it's relatively speaking, but very, not many most undocumented or illegal immigrants don't drive. If they do drive, the last thing you want to do is get caught. You're taking a huge risk. So you're going to follow all the traffic safety rules and you're going to do everything you possibly can and drive carefully. Not like Elijah, who drives really fast. You're going to be like, you're just going to do that. Because understand, the vast majority of people who are undocumented, the last thing they want to do is get sent back home, and they follow rules. That's why crime rates across the board are lower among undocumented people than any other single demographic group in the United States, outside of the fact that every moment they're breaking a crime by being here. So therefore, the numbers of motor vehicle accidents is going to be lower. But still, you don't want citizens taking stuff in their own hands. You don't. But the question just is, did we, I'm just going to ask the question to everybody, watch the videos. And again, most ICE arrests don't involve violence, and you just don't see them on video. They're just people, they comply, they go into a place, they find X people or whatever, and they leave with them. I mean, that's kind of what it is. You could argue that that in itself is violence, but I'm like, okay, I'm just trying to understand. But the degree to which there is violence, and we're going to see more of it because people now are resisting, right? Of course they're resisting. We're starting to see the impact. Are we ready for that? Are we all ready for it? That's all, man. Just, are we ready to watch it, to see it, and to be dealing with that? Is that what we want? And so that's my take. I'm just asking the question, man. I'm not I'm not. It unnerves the hell out of me. I will tell you, when I see those videos, I'm just like, oh man, I don't want to see this. But I'm not saying that. I'm not even weighing it on an opinion on whether I think it's right or wrong, good or bad. I'm just saying it really.
It's emotionally invoking.
It really rocks me emotionally, and I think it would rock a lot of people.
Right, but for something to be emotionally invoking doesn't mean inherently that it's right or wrong. Is what you're trying to say? Yeah. Hang on. Spiral Dancer says, I, as a white dude, second gen from EU, have been thrown to the ground and kicked with my friends in Vermont by Border Patrol. It just doesn't make good evening news. Well, it would if you, I mean, is someone recording it? Because if someone's Spiral Dancer, man, if someone's recording it, and you get thrown to the ground and kicked by them, it's going to be on the evening news. It doesn't matter if you're white or black or brown or whatever. Like, it's going to make something, right? Or at least it's going to show up on Reddit. So, all right, man. Okay, let's go to class. Let's go to yesterday's class. Mad About a Bunny, which, dude, awesome title, man. Mad About a Bunny. Wait, is this because the alternative halftime show and everything?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because people are mad about Bad Bunny playing at the halftime show, man.
And I'm mad about
others. Mad about a bunny. That might be the best.
I'm not mad about that. Huh?
That might be the best title I've ever come up with.
Mad About a Bunny. That's cool. Yeah, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
But they're doing an alternative halftime show because of that, right?
Now, what's his name? Charlie Kirk's organization, but I think they got to get someone to perform, right? Dolly Parton. Someone was putting forth Lee Greenwood's name, but Lee Greenwood's like 82 years old, man, and I don't think Lee Greenwood. We have more subscribers on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, than he does. He has like 100,000 subscribers. And
you should perform. Get the band back together.
Dude, I'm telling you, man. All of us.
You got
so Lee Greenwood isn't. He's the guy that sings that song. I'm proud to be an American, and then I think he has
okay.
He's a performer, man. He's fine, but he's not. He's 82 years old, man. He's not going to make it in the halftime show crowd. You got to run around and dance, and you got to do other things.
You got to Beyonce that. You got to Kendrick Lamar that.
Yeah, you know, rock it, man. It's like, just like nobody would be watching. There are a lot of brilliant scholars, far more brilliant than I'll ever hope to be, who could stand behind a podium in Social 100 Thomas and Social 18 and deliver an absolutely awesome lecture 2 days a week. Brilliant, but nobody would watch because it's not entertaining, man.
Right.
Yeah. You gotta.
What you're doing is brilliant too.
Well, dude, no, listen, man. That's why far more people watch the class videos than watch office hours, because it's like, whatever, man. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The interaction is on another level.
Oh, it's so much more interesting, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, that's same with Lee Greenwood. Lee Greenwood can stand, and I think he plays guitar and sing, but it ain't gonna fly, Lee. Plus, you don't have the audience. All right, man.
It's so interesting, because the NFL right now is they're trying to expand their audience,
Yeah.
because how they're doing football games in different countries. Like they'll do a
Yeah.
football game in Brazil, they'll do a football game in London, they'll do one in Ireland, they'll do it, because they're trying to expand their audience,
Yeah,
and
dude.
they've been making more commercials about like Latin commercials, and so
Yeah.
that would only make sense to me if they're trying to expand their audience,
Totally,
that
man.
Bad Bunny would be in
Totally.
the halftime show.
That's what we said in class yesterday. It's a pure, they were like, the students, it's purely economic decision.
Yeah, that's
About making money, man. It's a multi-billion-dollar enterprise, and you want it to be multi-billion-dollar. Man, like, fuck. Yeah, so
yeah.
people just miss that, but nonetheless, right? Okay. So listen, let's go to the first question. From Steven, he says, wouldn't Carlos, and question 9, wouldn't Carlos Santana be a better fit for that type of show? Dude, Carlos Santana, however, he's also 82 years old, and he's like not. Didn't Carlos Santana do the Super Bowl once? I think he might have been.
I have no idea.
Somebody else, but yeah, he's a little bit. He's old, man. He's old school, but
he's a rock guy, right?
But he's not, because young people, that you're going after the younger audience and all over the world, and they don't know who Carlos Santana is, man. The vast
right, and the younger audience that doesn't know about football, like Taylor Swift and the Chiefs. Now you have all these Chiefs fans,
dude,
fans,
and all these
Taylor
15 or 16 or 17-year-old girls who are wearing Chiefs jerseys, and they,
because.
Yeah,
wow, the way that they're using icons and culture to expand, that's so interesting.
Dude, it's totally Steven, man. Dude, did you see him over in Germany? I saw Carlos back in the day, man. Back in like 1977, I think.
That's cool.
That was pretty old. He was younger then. I was much younger then. I was 17. Dang. All right, man. The term American is generalizing term. This is Whopper's question. The term American is a generalizing term, as people from Latin America are Americans as well. Yep. May this be the cause of conflict in the U.S. social identity? I don't think so, actually. I don't think so. Well, I don't know. That's like a question that you go and take a hit off a joint and think about.
Is that like the idea that like Americans are the center of the universe? Like the idea, and so because they've owned the identity of American, even though others are, and that's what he's trying to point to, like this egocentric.
But I don't know, like how. So look, so the continent, north and the land was named, but we don't know where the name actually came from. I always thought it was Amerigo Vespucci, who was a map maker at the time that Columbus set sail, and shortly after Columbus, Vespucci actually came, I think, on one of the voyages, Amerigo, with a G, and then some people say it was named after him, but other people have come forward with different ideas about that. But in any case, everything was just the Americas. And then it started to get divided up into countries. And when he first landed, I think Vespucci first landed in like the Hispaniola, so like Dominican Republic and Haiti, I think. But everything I say, by the way, anybody can just jump on Wikipedia and look it up,
right?
You can put it in the chat, like, well, here it is, right? And so anyway, everything is the Americas. So like my friends in Latin America will often call themselves Americanos, right? But we're Americanos. But it's just become kind of accepted that when you say Americans, you're talking about people from the United States. It's just here in this hemisphere, that's just kind of mostly what everybody accepts. So like my more, critical thinking friends in Latin America would be like, I don't accept that. We're all Americans here also. But most people, they say Americans, they mean Americans. And we don't have a name for United Statesians, or we would.
Right.
Estadounidense is how you say it in Spanish. That means United Statesian. So yo soy estadounidense. I am an American. I am a United Statesian. But we don't have that. So
should we just like
know.
change our name to Amerigans? AMERGIGO.
Oh yeah, we could
Amerigans.
Yeah, for American.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Just change it up.
Anyway, that's the thing, man. So we sit there. All right, let's go let's see if we have another question here, man. No, hang on. Jennifer says, why is Bad Bunny being focused on for being political when many musicians are political? Well, yeah, Jennifer.
Wait, what was the question again?
Why is Bad Bunny being focused on or criticized for being political when lots of musicians are political? The answer is
he being political?
Well, yeah, because he has made statements about undocumented people, like first off, not wanting to perform in the United States because he performs here and Latinos come out to his show and lots of Latinos, including some people who are going to be undocumented, but yes, Latinos, then ICE comes out and they start harassing people because remember, you're profiling, right? So you're in this like space with 50,000 people who could be who are Latino. Okay, 45,000, right. 5,000 are people whoever else, but everybody, man, everybody. And so he's saying like, yeah, I'm not even going to perform there because I don't want people coming out to my show and getting harassed by ICE or getting arrested, and so that kind of stuff. So he's made statements like that, which indirectly is him kind of saying like, yeah, I don't support this ICE rounding up Latinos kind of thing. So people then see that as political. He's wading into political water.
Yeah, and would you say that
political? It is political.
Is it?
Sure
it's political because it's related to a side.
Yeah. But also what he's saying is, right, he's not saying like, hey, you know what, I'll play there and there'll be lots of undocumented people showing up and you can check IDs and you can take people away. Like he could say that if he was a MAGA person, a Donald Trump person, that's what he would say, but he's not. So the other side is he sings in Spanish, almost entirely in Spanish. So people are like, how can you possibly have a singer at the halftime show at the Super Bowl, which is the quintessential United States performance to show to the world, right? Mm-hmm. And how can you have a person that doesn't even speak English sing in English, man? Like what the hell is that about, right? So that's not very American. But yesterday in class, I was showing like, listen, man, 44 million Americans speak Spanish. Like, so they get represented once.
I wonder how many people are upset about baseball.
About so many Latinos playing baseball, they're definitely
now it's like upset. I don't know. Yeah.
No, they're upset about all the Latinos because like 40% of the major leagues now. Well, hang on, can someone look that up? By the way, can someone look up what percentage of the major league are of the MLB are Hispanics or Latinos? Okay, put that in the chat. It's a lot. It's probably at least 30%. But probably they're only upset with all the Latinos, Hispanics on the other teams. All the Hispanics on their team, they're all right, except the one they don't like because they keep striking out in the bottom of the ninth with runners on base. It's like, oh man, get rid of that bum,
Right? Yeah. I'm just like, well, so interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, that's another thing. All right, man. So Bad Bunny. So the other side, the other answer to Jennifer's question is that it's just that this becomes just, he's just in the middle of the hot political button issues of the day. And so they're going to criticize,
So was he saying that he wasn't going to perform at the Super Bowl, or he's saying he's just not going to tour?
He's not going to tour. He's going to perform. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, listen, wait, Jason. Oh, Jason just had it up. It looked like 28.5%. Oh, hang on, we'll put it back up. All right, man. So it's just like, yeah, he's just, he's in the wrong moment. If Bad Bunny had performed 3 years ago, nobody would have said anything, man. Okay, 28.5, almost, 20.5% of MLB, man. 40% are non-white. Huh. Yeah, you have growing numbers of Koreans in the MLB. I'm watching that. Man, that's but baseball is huge in Korea. So, Japanese also. Yeah, look at the most famous baseball player in the world right now. Yeah. LV commented on the stream. Sam, I appreciate you. Oh, thanks, LV. Ghost the program says, so Jeff, this is 13. Is the decrease in importance for speaking the language of the native country a sign of assimilation in U.S. culture? In any culture, like, look, you grow up. If you don't grow up and your parents if they don't speak the language with you and demand that you speak it, very few young people anywhere in the world are going to feel inclined to speak the language in the household, because unless their friends are speaking it in their household. So you live in like a Haitian, French and Creole speaking neighborhood, Little Haiti and the Queens or something. And so you're like, yeah, I'm speaking, all your friends' parents speak Creole, so you speak Creole. But if you're not doing that, you're not gonna do that. You're gonna want to go with your friends. That's kind of how it is. So anyway, if parents don't insist on it, if they don't really push it, then people aren't gonna speak it. But it could be such a really tight, big family. Like this happened with Italians a lot. These big Italian families, man, and they're getting together every week, and you got grandpa, pa, and grandma, and great-grand, and like people just hung on to the language a little longer because there was so much, family pressure to keep speaking it. Yeah, does that make sense, bro?
Mm-hmm. The family pressure we're speaking about like the pressure to speak English or their
or just pressure to speak your family, your heritage, your ancestors.
If you're in the U.S.
Yeah. And if you're anywhere,
I've heard that.
Anywhere
you
migrate, man, you're gonna
assimilate to the mainland. Yeah,
totally.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally.
I've heard that so many times from people from those I've met who are like second generation.
Yeah.
Or first generation, depending on. But
and so many people like. I have so many students now who understand their parents' language, but they can't speak it because the parents didn't insist that they speak back to them. The kids refused, to speak back to them in the language. They understood it. They had to understand it because the parents only spoke that language, but they refused to speak back, and therefore they never learned to speak it, but they can understand. And which is very odd if you think about it, right? And then now, once they get to college and they're in like my class and they're pissed at themselves for being like an idiot 8-year-old, what was I thinking? It was so stupid. But and the parents didn't, whatever they didn't like force it. You know what I mean? Sometimes parents, I talk to my students, their parents force it, man. You will speak to me in our family language, right? Yeah, you're learning English already. That's fine. You learn English out there, but you will learn this language, man.
And I'm seeing that right now with my stepmom and my 4 little siblings. Mm-hmm. All of them there's so much intention on them learning Russian. So much. Like they're taking tutoring classes in Russian. Cool. They're listening to cartoons in Russian. Cool. They are she's speaking to them in Russian. Like everything is. And
she makes them speak back in Russian.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's cool, man.
Very intentional.
It's totally got to do that.
But she talks about how much work it is. Like it's exhausting.
Dude, like how exhausting. Like, what do I care, man? Just go ahead and just learn English. And then you have a lot of parents who they think, the only way for my child to get ahead is if they learn English really well. And if they speak this language in the household, they won't learn English really well. Not realizing that in these key years, you can learn 10 languages and it's fine. The more confusion you have, the more clarity of thought you have. Wow, so it's like, don't worry about that. But a lot of immigrants don't know that. They don't understand that learning the second language will actually make your child smarter. Because it opens up these synapses in the brains. The people who are studying this are seeing it. They're understanding
how powerful it is.
Yeah. So anyway, if you're out there, if there's any, but it takes a lot of work, man, and you got to fight the kids, the resistance. So
And the money for the tutoring and the, like just all of that. Like,
yeah. All right, listen, man. Ed from Peru asked yesterday, do you think immigrant parents who don't teach their native tongue to their children are doing them a disservice? Yes, I guess we just answered that. Yeah, absolutely, man. Not even a question, man. Yep. And so you do it. The more you can teach, the better, but it's hard. Like what you just said, it's tough. Yeah. All right. So now we're at 15. Tornado from KC Metro said, why does America have a problem with people like me from Ecuador speaking Spanish? Well, most of America doesn't have a problem. And in fact, if you're in a Spanish speaking area, I've spent now a fair amount of time in areas of the country where I can basically speak Spanish 24/7. I've never, but there are lots of other people who are non-Spanish speaking, and so people go back and forth with English and Spanish. I've never seen any negativity toward using one or the other. And you go into a restaurant, I speak Spanish, I order in Spanish, and then they come back and I say something in English. It just is back and forth. It doesn't matter. I've never once seen conflict over this. So I would say that America doesn't have a problem in for most of America, but there are some people in the areas of the country who are not used to it are going to feel some kind of way about it, and because people feel weird. They feel awkward. Yeah, they feel awkward. Like sometimes I'm in Korea now, and I'm with a group of friends, like we go golfing. And so I'm with 3 Koreans and they all speak English. One speaks better than the other ones, but they don't speak really well. Like really, they're not fluent, and they can just talk in Korean, or I'm eating dinner and they can just talk in Korean. And I just am listening to them speak in Korean.
Yeah.
And it's okay, but it's a little awkward.
Yeah.
It would be really awkward. But for me, I'm like, oh, this is a really interesting situation. So I'm just eating, or riding in the car, and I'm on my phone doing something, and the 3 of them are speaking in Korean. And it's like, okay.
But for
most people can't handle that, man. Most people, it's really hard.
Because they need to be included, or they need to feel like they're a part of, to understand.
Yeah. So that's why some people really struggle with it,
And get offended, right? People get really
even offended. Yeah, but offended is just like, come on, man, lighten up. But you're that's how uncomfortable you are that you're actually going to voice your discomfort as offense. Like, how dare you speak Russian or French or oh my God. Yeah. But that's okay. I mean, that's what we are. We're like that, man. Lana from Cincinnati, number 16, says, can the controversy boil down to maybe by Bunny, by the way, the controversy, can it boil down with maybe many people would like to see a rock performance? Dude, that's what I'm saying, Lana. Wait. Yeah, the people want to see a rock and roll performance at the Super Bowl. That's me, man. I'm holding out for, like some rock and roll, man.
See, that's long gone. This is the world of rap now.
Dude, I know, man.
We're in the world of rap.
Just Mana. Probably bring Mana. We'll get some Latin rock. We'll get the best of all worlds. But yeah, man. Yeah,
so interesting.
Jenny Lee says, is so happy to have it. You're South Koreans. South Koreans are back studying at the kibbutz. Very cool, man. South Koreans, Jenny Lee, it's cool, I bet, man. It's different vibe, different everything. Anyway, yeah, so maybe that's Lana's right. It's just like, come on, give us some old-fashioned rock and roll, man. Bob Seger isn't touring anymore, but we could get some Seger up there. All right, Kelly from Australia says, should musicians not get invoked in politics? No, everything is political, man. Your songs, you're making a statement. even if you write songs about love, you're making a statement to people who are asexual. Like, I don't know, you know what I mean? Everything's a statement. Just look at what happened to Dixie Chicks or Taylor Swift after speaking out. Yeah, no. I think that the musicians should be very careful about it because, man, you go outside your lane, you got to be very careful. The Dixie Chicks, I saw them, an interview with them. Actually, you know what, bro? Have you ever listened to an interview with Taylor Swift? Have you ever heard her talk?
No, I don't follow. I never cared about Taylor Swift.
Dude, I listened last night. She was on the BBC. Okay, once again, and they were interviewing her. She was on this. There's a weekly program called the Arts Hour, and so I was listening. They were talking to her about her new recording, you know, Showgirls or whatever it's called. I don't know.
Oh, her new album that she dropped. Yeah.
Do you still say album? Because like there aren't albums anymore. Albums were the vinyl albums, and then it became
still album. Yeah, because they dropped the album on like the streaming service, and it's like an album, and then you click on it, and then it's just all the songs.
Yeah.
So yeah, they still say that's so funny that. But for you, that's like no, that's not an album.
Like, exactly. Okay, but I'm going to start using it. Anyway, Spiral Dancer. I didn't know that about Alice Cooper, but I would think Alice Cooper would be political. But yeah, I've never heard him say anything political. So, all right. So listen,
you were talking about you're going to go back to that.
So I was listening. They were interviewing her, right? Dude, she was really effing insightful, man. She was very insightful, very thoughtful. Very insightful about her own inner place, about her place in the world, about how the songs emerge out of her, all sorts of stuff. She was really insightful. That's all I was, because I didn't realize it was her. They were talking about the album, the album, right? And then suddenly I hear this person talking, and I hadn't switched. A car went by, because again, I was walking and a car went by, and it like kicked over where they would have probably said, hey, okay, so Taylor Swift, welcome.
Right.
And she was very insightful, man. I just want to put that out there. I was like, listen, I was sad when the interview stopped because she was saying such interesting things about herself and her life and her fans and the industry, one thing after another. I was just like, how that's
wow.
That
I'll have to check that out. And it's like surprising because you don't know what to expect from an artist sometimes.
Absolutely, man. Some of them are pretty insightful, and others are not. Like, obviously, you take Rush. Any of the guys from Rush, man, they're all like, you just listen to interviews with them. Well, old interviews with Neil Peart, but Neil Peart was, dude, the story. Here's the story of Rush. Do you know Rush? Do you ever listen to them?
My parents were like alternative rock, I guess, like 50 Nickelback, Three Doors Down. That was my mom. My dad was all like Usher, R&B, like that kind of vibe. So rock was never in my.
All right. Okay. Well, Rush was a 3-piece band out of Canada, and pretty progressive rock. Anyway. There's a story. I told this story somewhere. I don't know where I told it, but they toured their first major tour. I think was with the Rolling Stones or the equivalent of this. Maybe it was Zeppelin. It was one of these bands that they opened for them, and they were all partying and they're alcohol, drugs, groupies, whatever. And they went over to Rush's room to invite him over, to the party. They were at hotels, and they were sitting. The three of them were sitting and they were reading books. Like, dude, you're on tour. You're rock and roll stars. Like, what are you doing, man?
That's awesome. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's cool.
So cool.
Yeah. All right. So listen, man, what do we got? That was Kelly from Australia. Okay, hang on. Oh, we got office hours. Yeah, we got questions from today. All right. Whopper says, why socially does the U.S. spend a lot of time thinking about race? In the Netherlands, we focus more on nationality and regionalism. Yeah, but that's because race came to the Netherlands. Ancestral differences came to the Netherlands in a seriously big way in the 20th century. And otherwise, it was all about borders and ethnicity and so on. And it was really the middle of the 20th century. And race entered the United States in the 17th century. And we've been dealing with it ever since, because the differences based on race and trying to work it out. And so you all, for the Dutch, you just are now starting to think about it. But when it came time to think about it, you're thinking about it in terms of nationality. We were thinking about it not in terms of nationality, but in terms of race, like categories of people based on our physiological characteristics.
Yeah,
and by the way, Elijah, man, that answer right there, that was a cool answer.
Yeah, I was about to ask about it. because at first I was going to ask you what's the significance in thinking about race starting at the 17th century from the 20th century, and then my other question was, what is the difference between thinking about race in terms of ethnicity and category and thinking about race in terms of nationality? I didn't understand what you meant when you said thinking about race in terms of nationality.
Because if you're in the Netherlands, you're thinking, you have new groups that are moving in. People are coming in, right? Mm-hmm. You're not thinking about race in terms of nationality, but you're dealing with immigrants. So you have new groups coming in, but who are they? It's the English, who, they're not as tall as you are. The Dutch are a little taller and stuff, but whatever. You got the French, you have the Belgians, you have the French Belgians, Dutch Belgians, you have, the Italians, you have the Germans. You get it, right? Like, most of you are looking like you. So what the difference is nationality and culture. But in the U.S., that's not what we were struggling with. We were struggling with for 400 years of these people who completely look different from one another. So the Chinese coming over from the West, right, and the Mexicans, the indigenous peoples, and then it's one after another, and Africans coming from Africa, and all of the big differences that we're wrestling with, these big major physiological, morphological differences in people. So we were battling race, man. We've been trying to work this thing out. Whereas so the Dutch didn't have to deal with that for the most part. Everybody's Dutch or looking Dutch, or looks mostly like the Dutch. Okay. They weren't dealing with that until the middle of the 20th century, when immigration started happening in a more serious way.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for those that don't, like, what's it like for those that don't look like how are they thinking about? So you're saying like,
like, so there's the problem of when the Dutch, the people from the Dutch Antilles, right, or people from the various Dutch colonies in Africa, so you have these the people who are suddenly going into the Netherlands, and starting in the mid part of the 20th century, when we start to see the rise of that. So now people are coming from different parts of the world, and like, now we got to deal with this race thing. Like, well, who are these people? We used to be we got to deal with the French and the Germans and the Brits and the Irish, the Belgians.
Okay, so it's at the beginning of thinking about this now.
Yeah.
Like,
and now it's bigger.
Are there similar problems, like the same kind of issues now that America always dealt with? Okay.
Yeah, they're struggling in a different kind of way. They got to figure out
that's what I mean. What's the different kind of way?
It's it's a different question to ask. Do they belong here? Do these people, like from our colonies, right, who are now migrating, who now can come here to the Netherlands, do they belong here? Like, are they like us? Who's Dutch? Who makes a Dutch person? If it's only fairly recently that you're having to include these people who don't look like the average Dutch person, and say, like, now Korea is dealing with this right now. It's like, wait, now we have to expand what it is to be Korean. Like, it used to be, dude, there are people, I know people in Korea, Americans, for example. I know this one American guy. He's been in Korea for 30 years, man. He speaks Korean fluently. He's like integrated into Korean culture. He's married to a Korean. He's everything. He will go places, and Koreans will ask him if he likes kimchi, and be like, "Dude,
It's like,
I like kimchi.
dude.
Come on, man! Like, what are you talking about?" And then he says yes, and they're like, "Oh, that makes me so happy." I'm like, he's like, "I'm Korean, man. I live here for 30 years. That's like living in the United States." And we don't even have an equivalent of that in the US. There's nothing that you would say that like, you could maybe French fries. No, there's nothing. There's nothing at all. We have no equivalent. Everybody eats kimchi. 1 in 1,000 Koreans don't eat kimchi. You know what I mean? You're gonna eat it. It's at every table, every meal, at breakfast even. I go to breakfast there. I was just mentioning golfing. I'm gonna go. I'll have breakfast and we'll have kimchi. You know, like at 8 in the morning, man. At 8 in the morning, I'll eat kimchi. So like, shit. Yeah. So anyways, that's how much
that's interesting.
Koreans can't imagine. Many Koreans, they cannot imagine that somebody else could be Korean. It's like, yeah, I'm Korean.
Because it's like, oh, there's so many things you have to be acculturated to. They're like, there's so many things that make me different than you. How could you even assimilate to that?
New thing. Nobody got you. Everybody, Koreans are Koreans, man. They picture in your mind who a Korean is. That's who Koreans are, and that's who you see all around you your whole life. And suddenly, you know, once in a while you see these foreigners, but they're foreigners, but you suddenly start to see more of them, and then you got more and more foreigners who have been in Korea for decades, and they speak Korean without an accent, and like, oh my God. And so like more people get an opportunity to have that experience, but in the past, it was just so really rare. So you're not really wrestling with the issue of these foreigners because it was so rare. You didn't hardly even have the experience. Okay.
So now like there's really this consideration on like, oh, how are we going to preserve culture?
Yeah, exactly. What's this mean that we have all these foreigners here? What's it mean for Korean culture? What's it mean for who we are? You know, it's like, oh my God, things are going to fall apart. Like I can bow, you know, I act Korean every way. I do all the things that Koreans do. Let's say I'm out at a meal or I'm with people somewhere, everything is Korean. I know I mimic everybody else. I tone myself down. I like, you know, I don't stand out because you don't want to stand out. You want to be like everybody else. I'm like, okay, I got it. But like, I'm still me. Man, yeah.
Maybe
ketchup.
That's cool.
You know? Wait, Maximum said ketchup is the American kimchi. I know too many people that hate ketchup, man. Lori being
I know a lot of people that hate ketchup too.
Yeah, so no.
That's funny.
Either ketchup, mustard, or mayonnaise. If we could put them all together, that would be it. You know.
I heard that was like I heard that's like a Colombian thing, or like a mixture of the sauces, and they put it on a sandwich in the Bronx, and it's like the Bronx, or they have like it's like a mix. And
no, hey man, I wasn't talking about Mark. Actually, this is somebody else. Yeah, Mark doesn't live in Korea, although Koreans see him as Korean, and I mean they don't because he's, but they do. I mean, he's as close to being Korean as you could get, except he doesn't live there full time. Yeah. Royale with cheese. All right, man. Hang on. What do we got? Axel says, how did the U.S. culture in relation to jobs influence the U.S.? Oh, man, that's too hard. My sister is working the next 40 years in her profession in one company. Okay, I see. Well, it used to be common. It's not common now. It's not common anywhere in the world, actually. It exists, and those are often the cushy jobs that everybody wants, man. In Korea, when you graduate college, for example, you want to work at Samsung, you want to work at Hyundai, you want to work at SK, you want to work at one of these big chaebols, these big corporations, right? Well, same in Germany, right? You want to work for one of the big corporations. My brain just died.
Oh yeah, like Audi or like
corporations in my mind. Like,
I saw that.
So, I guess we have the same thing. Lori and I have been at Penn State for 35 years. For me, 36 for her. That's uncommon in academia, man.
Oh, really? What? Wait, say that again?
That it's
What's
uncommon
uncommon?
for someone to to teach at a one
University.
university their whole career.
Really? Okay, I didn't know that.
People move around so much, man.
Wow.
I don't know, hang on. It's much less common than it used to be. Let me say it like that.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, man. Tornado says if Americans have big issues with immigrants coming from Latin America, why should we welcome Americans in our countries like mine in Ecuador and others? Is there hypocrisy? Well, yeah, you got like in Ecuador, man. Ecuador switched to the dollar 20 years ago, but there are lots of Americans retire in Ecuador. Man, lots of Americans are retiring, especially in places like Cuenca, up in the mountains. These small cities, they're quaint, they're nice. There's none of the narco trafficking, relatively little crime kind of stuff. So many Americans, man. Last time I was in Ecuador, I couldn't, because I lived in Cuenca. I was like, oh my God, everywhere I went, there were these Americans there. And why should you welcome that? Well, that's part of the problem. Well, first off, they're coming legally. They're applying for visas, for some kind of residence visa, and your government is giving them the residence visa. So then, your government is welcoming them, and so you're part of the government. So you welcome them also. That's my response to Tornado, and but I suppose some of them probably overstay their visas and then they're there illegally, and that's a different issue. But I think that's what is really the issue right there. Mm-hmm. Okay, Ian says, what's the actual difference between Trump and Obama? Dude, Trump and Obama, man. I saw Ian. I wanted to respond to it. You said something about the fact that Trump or Obama sent back more undocumented people than Trump. That was true for a certain period of time, but I don't think that's any longer. I don't think that's true any longer, man. I think Trump is now. I think we've now moved to a different level. But yeah, that was certainly true in the first Trump administration.
Trump administration or Obama administration?
No, the first Trump administration.
Okay.
Still, Trump did not. ICE was not very active, and there was only one period with Obama when ICE was really active, and then a couple other periods when they were quite active. But so the difference. One of MAGA's biggest issues is that deportation numbers are not as high as the deporter in chief said they would be. Yeah, that's because they're realizing that it's very costly and it's very difficult to deport people. And it's what we talked about earlier. You're going to slither into or roll into this period of violent actions in order to make it happen. To succeed, like it's just going to get more and more violent. So, and it doesn't look good, man. I mean, it feels like, and I don't want to use this term, but when I think about the other day, because we were going to use this video of Kristallnacht, and it's just Nazi Germany, and I'm like looking at the German soldiers, and they were parading, like some Jewish people through the streets and arresting them, and I'm like, yeah, look, that just is really bad optics, man. Because that's what has to happen. It's not just here. It's just everywhere. That's what has to happen. So you gotta go after people, and it's gonna be your police soldiers who do it. And so it's gonna look. There are a lot of other places where this happened as well. So I only brought up Nazism because that's like the pinnacle of evil. When it looks like that, it's like, ugh, that's not good. Yeah. So that's what I would say. A difference. But in terms of difference between Trump and Obama, man, we'd be here all day. Jason from Jefferson says, is it truly a peaceful protest when you interfere with federal laws with violence? No, it's not a peaceful protest, man. Not at all. When the protesters are interfering with the protest, you're breaking the law, man. So that's not. Well, it might be peaceful. You might be standing. I saw this guy like just standing in front of this ICE police ICE officer. And the ICE officer tried to walk, and the person moved and shuffled a little bit, kept standing right in front of them. Well, on one hand, he's being peaceful. He's not doing anything. He's just standing there. But let's be clear, man. That's just only going to fly for so long. Okay. Right. And the officer he wasn't trying to do anything. He wasn't trying to arrest anybody. He just looked like he was trying to walk somewhere, and the person was in his way. But had the officer been engaged in some kind of police activity, like making an arrest or something like that, then the guy would have been in it breaking the law. But as it was, he was just kind of being a peaceful protester, a nonviolent protester, really. But, you could say obstruction. Yeah, obstruction. Yeah. Well, you have obstruction of their duties, but there's the other one of just getting in the guy's way, keeping him from walking down the sidewalk. I mean, come on, man. Listen, people, every one of us, there's something in the world that we would protest. We would be out on the streets protesting, okay? And there's something that's going to trigger us and send us out into the streets, every single one of us. And we're going to protest against the powers that be. And somebody else is going to be on the sidelines judging us for that. But every single one of us has that one issue that's going to send us out in the streets, and somebody else is going to be judging from the sidelines. So when I'm like, yeah, okay, the guy's standing in front of the ICE person, like, okay, what's the problem, really? That was this guy's thing. Every one of us has something that we would be doing the same damn thing. And so, that happens to not be mine. Maybe it happens to not be yours, but there's something else out there. So that's empathy, by the way, bro. That's empathy right there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's just like, yeah, now once I realize that, I got to think like, oh, damn. All right. What is it for me? Okay. Grant asked, what are your thoughts on Muslim prayer calls in public places like the US? Is this compatible with Western culture? Yeah, it's compatible because we live in a country where we have no declared religion. So any religion that wants to come in and, practice their religion, that's a cool thing. Oh man, there are two really big hawks right outside my window. Anyway,
get the bread out.
And besides, the call to prayer is so beautiful, man. It's so cool. So I remember the first time I was in a Muslim country. I was in Turkey the very first time, and I stayed in this hotel right outside the Blue Mosque. Well, there was one mosque, and then in the distance was the Blue Mosque. But I remember waking up. So I got in really late, and I woke up in the morning to the call to prayer right outside my window, and it was like, whoa, man. I opened the window. I mean, it was loud. I didn't have to open the window. It was just so cool. It's just soothing. It was nice. It wasn't too loud. It was, yeah. It was and then Lori and Bassam told me about this. He said, when you're in Istanbul, there's the Hagia Sophia, which they turned into a mosque. It was a Christian cathedral. And then you have the Blue Mosque. And if you stand right between them, they'll do the call to prayer, and one will wait till the other one ends. One will start, and the other one will wait until that one ends. And they're far apart. They're like at least a half a kilometer apart, right? And these are these two beautiful structures, man. I don't know, Jeff, can you just pull up the Blue Mosque and just put it up on the screen? I don't know if you can do that, but easily. But wow, man, one ends. So you just stand right in between the two, right? One ends and the other one starts. And it is the most beautiful. It was one of the single most beautiful sounds or experiences I've ever had in my life. It was wow. If I could have that here in the US, man, yeah, I love that. So there's the
Wow.
Blue Mosque right there. Yeah. It's really, man, you're standing right sort of outside, kind of where you see those people and like, and now look up Hagia Sophia, Hagggia Sofia, or Sophia. I'm not sure. It's spelled both ways. Yeah, it's so beautiful. Dude, I was in the Blue Mosque. I was in the Blue Mosque when the prayers happened, and I was meditating in the front. And like I was deep in meditation. My eyes were closed, and I felt somebody tap my my thigh, and they motioned for me to move up to join the prayer, right? And so everyone, all the men, this was part for the men, everybody was lined up in the prayer. And I was like, man, I don't even know if I'm like, okay. So I joined, man. I got in a row with everybody. Jeff, can you pull up people praying? Just like a Muslim prayer. Do that. Oh, look at that. That's so beautiful, man. That's so beautiful. God. Yeah, that's the inside of the Blue Mosque. So I'm in there. See that you can, Jeff, I don't know, you were a bit behind me, but in any case, yeah. And so I lined up, and everybody would see seated, and then they stood up, and their hands, like your hands are, these were like Sunnis, so their hands were in front of them, not at the side. That's a Shia thing, and then suddenly I was praying. It's like I just followed everything that everybody else did. It was so amazing, man. It was so
bad.
Oh, it was so cool. And then everybody got up, and I just stayed there and just kept meditating. And
wow,
yeah, it was like, that was my first experience in the Blue Mosque, and nobody was there. I went back to it a couple different times when I've been back to Istanbul, and there were so many tourists. It was really hard to deal with. I took Lori there, and I don't even think we went in. We went into a different mosque. It was too much. This was in the middle of winter, and I was alone. Yeah, it was really, really cool.
Wow.
So that's my anyway, Grant. So that's yeah. Even though we have freedom of religion, wouldn't the words used to formulate the U.S. Constitution make us a Christian nation? We're not really. You have to understand that the founding fathers were very afraid of people, of systems and people who were extremists in any kind of way. Remember, we were breaking away from the British, right? And the emphasis was on freedom. It was freedom from foreign rule. We were breaking away from the Church of England. That's very important, man. So that's part of the British Empire was built. The Church of England was one of the important glues that hold the British Empire together. And we were breaking away from all of that. And they said, no, and these were different people, Thomas Jefferson, I think it was Thomas Jefferson, kept a Quran and a Bible together. So if you go to the Jefferson Library, you see he's got his copy of the Quran, his copy of the Bible, Old Testament. Wow. And these people, they were a different breed. It was not the same, man. And so they didn't think about religion, God, in the way we think about it today. They thought about it much more from a sort of Judeo-Christian, and that's really important, Judeo-Christian perspective. So now I think that it's really important to let it happen. Look, there aren't that many Muslims. There's about 1% of the U.S. is Jewish, and about 1% of the U.S. is Muslim. It's not that many people. It's fun. If you get a chance to have Muslims build a mosque in your community, and you can hear the call to prayer every day, like 4 or 5 times, it's like, go for it, man. It's cool. It's really cool, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so much fun to be in a Muslim nation. When you're in a place like Istanbul, where they have more mosques per capita than anywhere, because you can go to Doha or Riyadh, or you can go to lots of places. It's not the same. But man, you're just in the city and the call to prayer happens, and it's just here, and you hear it in this one and then that one, and it's like 20 different mosques. It just resonates.
Wow.
It's like church bells. When you're in a place like Mexico City or in Quito, Ecuador, or in Mexico City for sure, in the midday when the church bells ring, and or like in Cuenca where I used to live, there was in this, it's a little town, it's a little city, but there were 9 churches. You could hear the church bells from all 9 churches by being in the city center where the cathedral was, but you could just listen to the church bells. And it's so cool, man. It was like, I wish I had church bells, I wish I had the call to prayer and church bells all day long. It's just, so anyway.
That's cool.
But other people would see that as, I don't know. It's like we get, I don't know. You have to have those, maybe you have to have those experiences or else you feel threatened by it. And then, people talk about Muslims taking over. Muslims want to impose Sharia law in the United States. Dude, okay, it's 1% of the population, and the vast majority of them are not interested in Sharia law at all because they many of them here to get away from Sharia law.
Right, because they want to practice their religion, but not as in the strict way.
Yeah,
right.
There might be a few places where you're like, okay, listen, here, and we have this Muslim school, and we need to deal with kids who are truants, and so we're gonna turn to the Quran and say, like, what's Muhammad say? Peace be upon him, right? Like in a Christian school, you'd be like, what would Jesus say here that we should do with this child who's writing graffiti on who knows what? Like, what should we say to them, right? Okay, that's fine. You want to do that, but it's not. Nobody's gonna impose Sharia law in the United States, man. You're 1% of the population, and it's less than 10% of the 1% that would have any interest in Sharia law at all, man. So
yeah, it doesn't even seem like I can't even imagine that at all.
That's the problem. Here's the thing: a lot of people who hear me say that right now, they don't know, they haven't thought about it. It's kind of like you just haven't thought it. It's like we supported Trump to find undocumented immigrants and deport them, but you didn't think about the fact that it's going to get really effing ugly, man. It's going to get ugly, and you're going to have to witness these officers chasing down 14-year-olds, tackling them and putting them in handcuffs when they're kicking and screaming because you're taking them away from their parents or whatever. You didn't think about that. But that's what we're gonna also get, and that's okay if you feel like okay but that's okay. That's what we have to do. Like that's that's fine. I'm not gonna tell anybody what to think. But the same is true with Muslims. You haven't thought about it either. Like it seems like Muslims are everywhere because everyone's talking about it, but they're not, man. They're not. And they don't want Sharia law either, man. It's like Orthodox Jews. I can't tell you how many Jews I know that are atheists, but they're still Jewish in the terms of culture, but they're atheists, man. Queen rabbis. When you argue with God for your whole life, at some point in time, you're arguing. So your argument has nothing to do with God. It has everything to do with a system of ethics that God represents. And then it's like the old joke about the rabbi that said to God, like, I have this really great joke about the Holocaust. Do you want to hear it? And God said to the old rabbi, it's like, isn't, and so he says, okay. And the rabbi tells the joke and God doesn't laugh. And the rabbi says to God, oh, I guess you don't get the joke. I guess you'd had to have been there. You had to be there. Right? It's like, whoa, man. Yeah, God. Okay, so now you're in argumentation with God. Like that's all you're doing. You know what I mean? Eventually it's no longer about God. It's just about yourself. And once it's only about yourself, then you become an atheist. That's what it is, man.
That's interesting.
Yeah. That's pretty cool, actually. I don't know where I came up with that, but
I don't know. I'm like thinking about that, still processing.
Dude, I guess you had to be there, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the greatest jokes that I've ever heard, man. It's just like, yep.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. So, hey, wait, I want to ask Jenny Lee. Jenny Lee, have you, that joke I just told about the rabbi and God, have you heard that before? Is that one that just like all Jewish people know that joke? Or is that not as common as I imagine it would be? Because I think it would be really, really common. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yeah. It is like, it's one of those jokes. Yeah. It's intense, man. I mean, I'm laughing. It's not like, I'm laughing out of not laughter like it's funny. I'm laughing out of like, it's holy shit funny. Like, think about that. One of the single most horrific events in a period of time in human history, right? One of the most the playing out of the Jewish Holocaust, right? There's nothing. I mean, you can't. In terms of a short period of time, in terms of like the people, human beings, advanced modern human beings using their left brain to figure out how quickly and how extensively they can exterminate and also get rid of the bodies of so many people, of an entire population of people, okay? And then throw some other people in for good measure, like, communists and Catholics, gypsies or Roma people, trade unionists, that kind of thing. And that's what the Holocaust is, right? The Jewish Holocaust. And here is this event. And now you have to ask the question is, where was God? Right? Where was God? What's this have to do with God? Come on. So what this so-called joke does is put that front and center. And then now you have to
I finally get the joke now. Wow.
Yeah, you have to confront the fact that your God, for those who believe in a God, right? Forget it. You got to confront somehow. So you have to believe in, like this predestination. You have to believe that God believes that human beings have to make their own decision. You have to believe, but in any case, God's in control. So decides to take her or his hands off the wheel for a certain period of time, or there's a devil, and the devil God created because God knew that we needed to have whatever it is, you got to come up with some reason that God was not there at this time when the most horrific thing really happened.
Wow. Yeah.
Like you got to come up with some explanation. So then the joke points us to the fact that we as humans who believe in a God have to come to some understanding that God, that she or he wasn't there. It's like, how do you do that? How do you do that? How do you explain that? And that's why rabbis are rabbis, man. That's why theologians are theologians. I've known some theologians, they just sit in their rooms and they ponder God in all of their books. And rabbis, the same, you're just in argumentation. You're thinking about it. You're wondering about it. You're trying to like, what a fascinating fact. I mean, I've been in conversation with God. I've been in an argument with God since I was 20. So 45 years. Yeah. I've been in an argument with God. And God kind of understands me, and I understand God as best I can. And I think God understands me, but we've been arguing, and it'll never get resolved, but every day I argue with God. Yeah. It's my, it's my thing.
Wow.
Yeah. It's sad that I won't know. The only thing is I'll die, and then I'll have some encounter with some life energy, which I think I will encounter. But I won't be able to come back and do another podcast.
You come back on Wednesday, man. Yeah.
Yeah. It's what it is. And I don't get vicious. Like, I don't, Ian said George Carlin for president. I'm not like Carlin. I'm not like, not angry in the way that Carlin was angry. I'm not. I'm disappointed sometimes, but I'm disappointed that God doesn't. There aren't, as Lori says, we don't have more. I don't know. Directions, operating instructions. She says, yeah. All right, man. Anyway, listen. Wilhelm said, "How much does language impact the negative view on immigration?" I think a huge amount. Definitely, you can be undocumented and you speak English very well. It's just people are just going to accept you more. That's just the nature of it, man.
Right.
You can be documented. You can be an immigrant, legal, whatever it is. The more you speak English, the more you're accepted. The more you speak the language of your new country, the more you're accepted. Doesn't matter what it is. So I miss Rashidi spends so much time studying Dutch, man. Yeah. All right. Spiral Dancer, final one. Maybe in another direction, I would love to hear how Koreans view their birth crisis. Oh my God. Spiral Dancer, if you're still on. Lori and I.
It's a big thing for you right now.
Yeah, Lori and I are the hosts of a 3-part television series in Korea. And we're going back in a couple weeks. Actually, two weeks from yesterday, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, we're
next week you're going, right?
Yeah. I leave on Friday, but Lori then comes over, and then we're going to do the final day of filming. We filmed for like 10 or 11 days of filming for this series. It was really intense every day. So anyway, all we did was talk about the population crisis. So anyway, I have a lot to say. Maybe when I come back, we'll do something on that. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, listen, man. I think we got to go.
You want to explain how the stream and everything's going to go on for the next 2 weeks while you're gone? Like, are you streaming in Korea or like what's happening?
Okay, so I'm definitely streaming. I'm streaming on. Hang on, what's the day that we're definitely streaming? You can mark your calendars if you want. Hold on. We're definitely gonna stream on. Okay, Monday morning the 3rd. This is one where I'm going to do office for sure. I'm doing office hours because we're going to test the cameras. Monday morning. So this would be like probably 10 p.m. 10 p.m. in the U.S. on Monday, the 3rd. So it's going to be late. Yeah, if you're in Europe or something, it's like not going to be good. But who knows? Maybe you want to just like pop it on or something. I don't know. Okay, so then on late afternoon, so like at 3:00 on that Monday, we're gonna do a talk that we'll stream. And I'll stream in a few other times. I'll like pop my phone out and stream. I'll be at a couple different places. We'll definitely stream. So, yeah, we'll see where we go. Jeff, you and I will talk about how best to do that.
Yeah, you'll give another tour of the park.
Yeah, another tour of the park. Yeah, we'll do a Korean. Wait, I did a tour of the park in
Colombia.
Bogota, Parque.
And Bogota.
Yeah, okay, we'll do one of Korea too, man. We'll see what the difference is.
Facts.
We'll do a few. All right, anyway, so yeah. So we will definitely do some streaming from there.
Make sure you hit the notification.
I recommend a good sociological historical book that would really help expand my view. Oh man. I can't. Honest to God, I don't have. I got one for you. A lot of people don't like this book, but wait, I can't think of the book. Oh, ask me later. I'll get one to you, man. Oh, 7 a.m. UK. All right, Stephen, we'll see you there, man.
Make sure you hit the notification bell on YouTube, and you'll get notified, hopefully, if YouTube works properly, that we go live. It'll be off of our normal stream hours, but if you come to the channel Tuesdays and Thursdays over the next few weeks, we'll be streaming. It'll just be previous semesters, so you'll still be able to jump in and have the combo if you want, but if not, we'll be back in the beginning of November. Yeah, and I will try to be on as much as possible, but man, it's hard. When I'm in Korea, I'm just going 24/7. Go. Yeah, it's really.
hard.
And our stream. Much love to our Dawg, tier 2 sub. Got Christian.
Yeah,
thanks, man.
Everybody. All right, man. Flop a whopper. I'm gonna think about it. Okay, for sure. All right, man. Hey, thanks everybody. Well.